Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for this session. We're looking at one of our report designer series of webinars today. It's session number 4, where we're looking at the basics of adding expressions to reports and layouts. So something to start getting stuck into a little bit. Session should last around about 45 minutes. Obviously, we'll try and take questions along the way as well. Right, now just before we get started and on the subject of questions, a little bit of housekeeping just before we do get going. As usual, don't need a microphone. If you've got one, if you enable it, it'll just be muted automatically. So any questions you have for us today, you'll need to pop them into the questions panel. To access that, you just need to click the little speech bubble icon on your taskbar. It'll expand the panel and you'll have access to the box in the bottom right hand corner. So comments, questions, pop them in there, do engage with us, click send, and we'll try and pick those up. Now we're joined today by Abby, Jackie, Tim and Tina. They'll be on hand to answer those questions. So they'll be assisting there. So we'll keep them busy, keep your questions coming. As I say, we'll try and get through as many as we can. Now you will receive an email later today as well. It's the same links that you receive when you register for your webinar, the reminder webinars, and also the follow-up email that you receive. And it's the same links that I'll be talking about in today's session as well. So that email is going to contain those, meaning you can register for other webinars and also so you can access our recordings as well. So watch out for that. Always the same too. Just as a reminder, obviously our report design webinar series, we're running 6 topics. Now we've finished with session 1 and 2 now because we've run those and repeated them, but they are available as a recording if you have missed those sessions. Again, you'll be able to access that via the link on your follow-up email. Session 3, we ran that one yesterday and we'll be repeating that next week, where we're looking at tables and variables, and we'll be building on tables and variables in today's session as well. So the little bit of knowledge that we touched on yesterday, we'll be adding a few variables onto the report today, just to almost like reinforce that a little bit. Obviously, today's session is expressions. Next week, we're introducing 2 new sessions, which is 2 introduction sessions to sections and groups, and also to criteria and filters. So if you haven't yet registered for them, please do so. Use those links when you receive them. Right, back to today's expressions webinar. So we should be on for around about 45 minutes in today's session. It's going to start with a bit of an introduction, and as with all the other sessions so far, it will be mainly demonstration. So I've got a number of demonstrations that I'm going to go through, including a little maths test for you. So we'll be running through that one as well and getting you involved at that point. So we'll run through a number of demonstrations, trying to show you how simple adding something like a basic expression can be. It can be a complex area, but we're going to concentrate on just the very basics today. Just once we finish those, we'll explain more about the additional support. So I've got loads of links for you as well. If you have downloaded the standard handout for today's session, there'll be a number of links on. The information is really easy to find in relation to expressions, but if you want it to hand, then just download the handout. Again, available via the link on your taskbar. We'll then just reinforce a little bit more about the webinars that we've got coming up. And then if there are any outstanding questions, we'll try and pick those up as well. So lots to get through today, but again, we're going to concentrate on the basics, so introducing you to expressions. Now, an expression basically tells the report designer what information to include on your report. And you'll probably think of an expression when we finished as basically a calculation, which is probably generally what they are used for. And when the report is generated, each expression is going to calculate to basically produce a value, whether that's a numeric value, it might be potentially, it could be a date, it could just be a string of text, depending on what it is that you set up. So basically an expression is a formula that can include numbers, text, variables, or data fields as we keep referring to them as well, operators, so your mathematical symbols, and also other functions as well. And as you can probably imagine, when there's that much available that you can put into an expression, there's essentially no limit to the variations of things that you can do with expressions. They can be straightforward, which is what I'm going to concentrate on today, the straightforward element. but hopefully that will give you maybe some food for thought as to what you could use it for. But they can get quite complex as well. So as I say, we're just going to get started with basic expressions as an introduction to the concept of adding them into your reports. So we'll dive straight in at this point. So I'll switch across to my desktop and we'll get stuck in. Now the first demonstration we're going to use today is I'm just going to use a basic customer report, and I'm going to modify the report to try and calculate the amount of available credit that they have available. So if we were to think about the calculation that we would want for that, it would be the credit limit of the account less whatever the existing balance is. So that's the basic expression that we're going to add onto the report. So we'll get started with that then. So to work through that, again, I'll build up on some of that knowledge you may have gained in previous sessions as well. So session 3 that we looked at. So we're going to start by going into customers, and we're going to go into reports, and in customer details, we're going to use the customer list report today. So this one here, I'll flag it as a favorite as well. We might come back to it a little bit later on. So customer list. Now, if I just preview that one to begin with, and I'll just accept that criteria. And it's only going to show me one customer at the moment. That's all that I'd had selected on the list. So again, going back to session 1, where we're talking about things you can do before you even run a report, so helping to filter your list, I've selected one record, so it's only pulling that one record through onto the report. If I didn't select any, or I'd highlighted more than one, it would pull those through as well. But this is a basic report where we've got the account reference, we've got the name of the customer, it's got the contact name, telephone, and if I did have one, it would have the email address as well. So this is the sort of my starting point that I'm going to use today. So I'm just going to close out of that. We'll still with it selected, we'll go back into edit it. What I'm going to start with is I'm going to make a little bit of space on this one. Let me zoom in as well so you can see that a little bit clearer. So I'm going to get rid of the telephone number and the email address. So nice and easy to do that. Just click on it, select telephone, press delete on the keyboard, it removes it. I could also right click on it, and there's a delete option, and again, it'll remove it. What I'll also do is I'll get rid of the headings for the time being as well. So then what we're left with is just a nice, very basic report. And now we've just got the account reference, the name, and the contact name. Right, let's get back to design view. Now, before we make any changes and try and save it, what I will do is I'm going to rename the report. So again, this is something we picked up on in session 2 as well, where we go into report properties. So into the report menu, into report properties, and I'm going to I'll call it, put my initials at the beginning, and I'll say customers with available credit. And I'll just leave the report description as it is. So we'll just OK that. What I'll then do, I'll go to File and Save As, and I'll give it a new file name. And I'm just going to call this one, call it RD4, so Report Design Session 4. And we'll save that. Now, if we just close out of the report just for a moment before we get stuck into adding variables and expressions. Now this one, because we've done a file save as, I'll find it in the My Customer Reports. So it's this one here. So let me just flag that one as favorite so we can easily find it. So if you do just edit a report and you save it, it's unlike layouts where layouts would automatically save it just into the default folder for you, so it appears in the list with everything else. With this one, it defaults to my customer reports, and if it was suppliers, you would have my supplier reports, my nominal reports, my bank reports, etc. So that's where you'll find it, just in case you create one and you think, well, I've closed out, now I can't find it. That's where. But it's also because I've flagged it, it appears in the favorites list as well. There. Anyway, we'll highlight it, we'll go back into edit, and we'll start making some changes. So we're adding some information in. Right, so we've cleared the space. And what we're going to start with is we're going to start by adding in some data fields or variables. So to do that, we just click Add Data Field. I'm going to click onto the sort of a blank part in the main body of the report here, so in the details section. Let's give it a click. And then what I'm after is it's within the sales ledger. And I'm going to start by adding the credit limit. So there it is. I'll select it, click OK, and it'll pop that in for me. Now I'm going to come back to the formatting in a few minutes as well. Now I can add titles in. We'll quickly do that in a second as well. For the time being, what I'll do, I'll just click off it and I'll quickly add in the balance as well. So we'll add data field, click onto the report where you want to insert that information. And again, it's within the sales ledger and we're just after balance this time. So we select it, click OK, and it'll pop it in there for me as well. Now, as it stands, if I just click off that and we click preview at the bottom, you'll be able to see how, when we OK that, how it pulls that information through. Now, obviously, we want to add some titles. We can budge them over a little bit as well, just so we got a bit more information for the future demos we'll be running as well. And then we can also change fonts so it's consistent with the rest of it. So we'll quickly do that just to tidy it up before we add our first expression. So back into design view, we'll make the credit limit a little bit narrower. So I'll just drag highlight it and drag the sort of the point over the button, just drag it so it is narrower. For the balance, we'll do the same. Select it, make it a bit narrower, and then what I'll do is I'll just drag that across as well. To make it the same, I'll just quickly select, I'll select contact name just so I can find out what this is. So in this case, it's in criteria details. So we want Tahoma size 8. So we'll just do that. We'll just quickly select criteria details. It'll put it the same as the rest of it then. So we got that consistent font in this section. We're clicking at some headings as well. So again, we covered this in session 2, adding text onto the report. We could either start from scratch or possibly one of the easiest ways is just to find a one. So we'll just right click on that title at the top, contact name, copy it, and then just right click on a blank part and paste. Just drag it roughly in the right position. And then I'll double click it and I'll click into the box and I'll change the text to credit limit. I'll just right click again, copy, paste, drag that one to roughly in the right position. And if I double click on it, and I'm going to change this one to be called balance. Click off it. And if we now just preview it, again, we'll see what that looks like. So this is going to be our starting point. Now, if I'd wanted to, I could, for that one, for instance, I could align everything to the right-hand side, just so it looks a bit more numerical then. Right, let's get back into design mode and we'll start adding in some expressions. So the expression we want is, we want credit limit less balance to give us a value of whatever the available credit is. So we'll pop into design mode. And next we're going to add that expression in. Now to add in the expression, we're going to just pop it to the right of where the balance is. We're going to go to the toolbox menu and we've got the option add expression. And again, we just click approximately where we want to insert that. So again, in the details section, just to the right of balance, I just click. It'll bring up the expression editor window. Now we can access that in another way as well. If I just cancel that for a moment and I delete that expression 3. If you're going to be adding a lot of expressions, what you can do is right click on your like a blank part of the toolbar at the top, and you've got an option called Toolbox Advanced. And in there you've got the option to add an expression. So it's a bit like having just the extra toolbar at the top. I'm going to get rid of that one for the time being. We'll go back to Toolbox, add expression, and again click where we want to insert that. So this is the expression editor window. Now we'll quickly run through the expression editor window just to explain what you can actually see. So it's split into 3 key areas. You've got the left-hand pane here. So this is going to show any expression that you already have. So anything that you've already set up. You'll find it when if you double click an expression, it would show you the expression that's there. So that's where we're going to start building the expression on the left-hand side. The right-hand side split into 2 panels. So you've got your functions and you've got your fields, or what you would term your tables and your variables. So again, if you haven't attended session 3 yet, do get along to that one. Now the functions panel contains the different instructions you can give the report designer to tell it how to treat information that you want to work with. Now there's a huge number of functions available. So if I just collapse this one that says accounts, you can see we've got aggregates, category, helpers, colors, date, time, encoding. So there's loads in there. However, the main one that you're likely to use is the operators folder. Now this is where you'll find your standard sort of mathematical functions. So plus, minus, times, divide, equals. However, you will just be able to type those in. So it's probably something that you're not likely to come into, but it is these ones that you're most likely to use. So I think probably most people will find that they never actually need to use anything outside of that operators option. Right, now the fields themselves, obviously it contains your tables and variables, or data fields as we keep referring to them as, that you can work with on the report or the layout that you're editing. It'll also show any existing expressions as well. So this is a little folder here, so it's almost like a little table in itself. So any expressions included in the report will be included in there as well. So just as a reminder, what we're after is credit limit less balance. So we're going to insert the expression. So we're going to start with credit limit. So we scroll down, find the sales ledger table, and we'll just find credit limit. Scroll down to find it. Here it is. And I'll just double click it. And you'll see it pops it over here. So it's got the table and the variable name. So table is sales ledger and the variable is called credit limit. Next, we can go to the functions panel and we can expand operators and find the minus sign. Now we could of course just click into here and we can type that in. So you've got the choice. You're probably more likely just to click into this box and type it, or if you want to use the operators, you would just find it, again, double click it, and it pops it in there for you. Now you'll notice I haven't put any spacing in there, so it will calculate, the expression will calculate with or without the space, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes if you put spacing in, which you'll see in a moment, it makes it a little bit easier to read, particularly when you're building up complex expressions. So anyway, we're going back to sales ledger credit limit, and we want to take away from that the sales ledger balance. So we'll find that in our list of fields. There it is. We'll just double click it and it adds it. So as you can see, it's quite a little bit difficult to read there. So sales ledger credit limit less sales ledger balance, but it will work with or without spaces. If I want to put spaces in, just click into the relevant place and pop them in there. Just makes it that little bit easier to read. So if you are building up complex expressions, try and make the format a bit easier on the eye. Anyway, we'll just OK that, and it pops it in onto the report, and it gives it a name. Now in this case, it's just called it EXPR3. We can change that if required as well. So if we want to go into, if we just select it, and if we go into the properties, which if we just switch properties on. So with this one selected, we've got a properties option down the right-hand side here. So we can name it if we want to, rather than just being called expression 3 and it's sitting on a report and you're thinking, oh, what's that one again? Can't remember. You can actually rename it. So say something along the lines of, available credit, something like that. I'll just leave it as expression 3. Just collapse that. I'll also make that a little bit narrower. Don't need that much space. And again, we'll pop in a heading at the top. So I'll copy it, just right click, paste, and we'll just rename that title. See if I can type today. There we go. So we'll just call it available. I can narrow that as well if I want to. Right, if we now have a look, we'll just preview it. OK that. And we can see got some couple of nice simple ones at the top that I've put in there as well. So you're not having to deduct pence or sit there with a calculator. I've just put credit limit of 1,000. You can see what the balance is. Let's zoom in a bit so you can see that a little bit clearer as well. So we've got 1,000, the balance is 240, and it's saying the available credit is 760. So that's a nice simple example, and probably one that a lot of people will it's sort of, I suppose, almost like the starting point as well when you start adding expressions. Again, if you think of any questions, let us know. Pop them into the questions panel, and we'll try our best to pick those up for you. Now, as was mentioned in session 1, there is more than one way to crack the same nut. So if this was just a one-off, you might be thinking, well, available credit, I could get that in a number of other ways. So let me just close out of this for a second, just to remind you. So again, going back to that very first session, before you start thinking about making changes, if I just save these changes and close out. So I've got the credit limit and I've got the balance on my customer list. So if I wanted to work out available credit as almost as a one-off, I could just select the relevant records that I want, send it to Excel. So just opened on my other screen there. So let's drag that across so you can see it. And then it would just be a simple case of me putting in a formula of this value minus this one in this column. So nice and easy, drag it down. It's the equivalent. But if it's something you want on a permanent basis, you're going to be using it on regularly, then yeah, that's when you would maybe edit a report. Right, let's just get rid of Excel for the time being. I just wanted to, again, emphasize the fact that you don't always have to create a report. Right, next part of the demonstration, what we're going to look at is we're going to look at adding an additional field, an additional expression to that report that we've just amended. And I want to know the available credit as a percentage. So what's the percentage of credit available? So we'll go back into reports, find my report. So this is the one we've been amending so far. We're going to edit it. And we'll add another expression on the end here. Let's just nudge these ones across just a touch. Right, so we're going to add another expression here, which will be the percentage of credit available. Now to calculate that, what we're looking at is the available credit divided by the credit limit itself, multiplied by 100. And there's a few different ways you could potentially achieve that, and that's what we're going to look at today, and how you need to be careful with your formulas. So we're going to add another expression in. So again, toolbox, add expression, click approximately where we want to insert that. Now, rather than us do credit limit minus balance to find the available credit, what we can do is, we've already calculated that one, so we can use expression 3. That's exactly what that figure is. So we double click expression 3, pops it on there for us on the left hand pane. We're then going to do divide. So again, I could just click there if I needed to. Or we can go into the functions panel and look for the relevant operators. So I'll just go to type it in. I'll put a space in, I'll put the divide in, and then again another space, and then we'll look for sales ledger. We're after credit limit again. Just scroll down to find it. There it is. And then we want to multiply the result of that by 100 to essentially give us that percentage. So I'll just OK that. Again, I'll make that one a little bit narrower. And then we'll just preview it at the bottom. OK that. And we can see we've got the relevant amount then. Obviously, some do have a negative where we've got a bigger balance than what the credit limit is, but we can see this top one at the above here. So we got 76%. And again, we could put a total in there. Sorry, a title in there if required. But sometimes you need to be a little bit careful with that. And it brings us on to a little bit of maths theory at this stage. Now, I'll get you involved with this stage. So this is your basic maths test, and you'll probably see things like this on social media and stuff, and people will put, what's the answer to this? So if you don't mind getting involved, pop an answer in the questions panel to this one. So what's the answer to this maths test sum that we've got on the screen? So 2 + 2 × 5, what would you say the answer was to that? So someone be brave and pop an answer in there. I'm not going to name and shame, but I'm sure I'm going to get loads of different answers, and I can see different answers coming through already. So the common ones, and everybody's putting one or the other, but I've got a bit of a split on them as well. So the common ones, it's going to either be, you're either going to come up with the answer 20, or you're going to come up with the answer 12. And the reason for that is you're either going to do 2 + 2, which is 4, and then multiply that by 5 to get the 20, or you're going to do 2 × 5, your 10, plus the 2. So you're going to get your 12. So again, got a bit of a mix there, which just shows that. And that's where we want to apply things like what you term your BODMAS theory. Now, some of you will have heard of things like BODMAS. So it's an acronym to help you remember the order of mathematical operations. So it's designed to help you. So you should do them in the order that they're listed. So you would do anything within brackets first, then anything orders, so powers, indices, roots, then division, multiply, addition, and subtraction. So just the abbreviation of BODMAS. If you've got children, or if you're thinking back to your school days, it was probably BODMAS. If you're anywhere near the same age as me, if you're a bit younger, you might have come across BIDMAS, which is probably essentially the same thing. So just brackets, indices, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. So just going back to that, if we had applied that BODMAS, BIDMAS theory, it should be multiply before the plus. So it should be 2 × 5, your 10, add the first 2, so 12 should have been the answer. So you just need to be a little bit careful. So we haven't put brackets on there, but it will just automatically apply the multiplication before the plus. And that's something that can catch you out a little bit when you're applying expressions to your reports. So let's just quickly go back to my screen. We'll go back into design mode. Now in our example, this expression 4, we'll go back into that one. We've got expression 3. Now expression 3 is credit limit less sales ledger balance. So if we don't use expression 3, so I just cancel out of that for a second, and we put a further expression, we'll just try and tag it on the end. Let's move everything across a little bit again, just so I can try and fit it all on. I'll just drag them across. There we go. And we'll put a final expression on the end. So if I go to, again, Toolbox, Add Expression, I'll just click here into the little space at the end that I've managed to make. And again, what we're after is sales ledger. We want credit limit. Then we'll do minus balance. Then we want divide by. We want the credit limit again. And then we want it to multiply that by 100. So if we hadn't had that first expression which we used, we could type it out like that. So if I just OK that at this stage, and let's drag it onto the screen so we can actually see that. And if we just preview that, OK that, and you can see that because of the way the calculation is, and because it's followed that BODMAS or BIDMAS principle, then it gives us different results. So you do need to be a little bit careful. Now we can get around that by using brackets in our expression. So we just go back to design view, and we'll double click on expression 5. And what we want it to do is we want it to calculate this bit first. So this the credit limit less the balance. Then we want to divide the result of that by the credit limit and then multiply by 100. So what we can do is just put some brackets in. So we put our brackets in to say, right, we want to do that first, brackets first. Then if we OK that, and then if we preview it again, then we now get the same value. So do be careful with that. Obviously, if you've got a value already calculated, that's essentially you've put the brackets around that part of the calculation by using the expression rather than building it from scratch again. So I hope that makes sense. It's something to be careful of. So if you're not getting the results that you maybe anticipated, it might just be a case you might just need to put some brackets in here and there. So I hope that one makes sense. It's something that it does catch people out. So watch out for that one. Right. Now the final demonstration I'm going to do with you today, I'm going to use a totally different report. So let's just save that one. We'll close out. And I want to show you how you use expressions with text. Now, popping text onto things like reports or layouts could be used for loads of different options, maybe adding specific payment terms to the bottom of your invoice layout, maybe other conditions on an invoice. It could be used for a whole host of things, and it's probably one of those that you'll maybe start thinking about going forward. But you can use expressions. They're not just used for numeric values. You can use them to string text together from your Sage Accounts data. So I'm going to give you a quick example. So we'll choose a different report. We're going to go into invoices and credits. We'll pop into reports, into invoice profit. And the one I'm going to use, if I got the right one, it's this. Yes, it's this one. So profit report by customer, and it's a summary. Now, if I just preview that, just so you can see the type of information that's included on it. So we'll go and select something. No, anything other than a quote, that would have probably helped. Try that one again. So invoice profit, that one at the bottom. We've got this information here. So this is a bit like what the report would look like, just based on that one invoice that I'd selected. Obviously, I hadn't selected anything, I'd have a great big list. I don't want to confuse the matter just by having loads of information in the background though. Now, if we look at this report, and this is where sometimes it can be useful just to pop a quick expression in there. If we look at the report, we can see there's quite a gap here between the account reference of the customer. Actually, let's zoom in so you can see that. I can hardly see that myself. So we can see there's quite a gap here between the account reference and the name of the customer. So we could almost like merge that. Now, yes, we can do something really simple. First of all, if we just close out and we edit the report, we could find that section, so the account reference and the account name, and I might just get rid of that heading, and I might think, well, actually what I want to do is I'll just nudge that across so it's a bit closer. So if we now preview it, should have loads of information this time. You can see at the top, it's a bit closer, but there's still a gap there. And this is where we can instead use an expression to string some information together. So what we'll do is we'll make them even closer by using an expression. So back to designer view. I'm going to get rid of these two. So we'll select highlight it, delete, highlight, delete. I'll change this bit of text here to just customer. So all I did was I double clicked it. This should give us a flashing cursor within that box. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to put an expression in here to almost combine the account reference and then the name of the customer. Right, so we're going to go to Toolbox, add expression, and then again, just roughly click where we want to insert that. Now what we're going to do for this one is we need to pull in this case, the account reference, because it's an invoice report that we're looking at this point. I need to look for the table invoice. So there it is. And what I'm looking for is the account reference, which nice and easy, it's the first one on the list there. So just double click it, pops it in here. So that's essentially pulling through the account reference that's saved against the invoice itself. Next, I'm going to put a space in. I'm going to put a plus sign in. So if we want to string text together, we need to use a plus. Now I also want to put a bit of text in. In this case, I just want to put, I'll put a dash in. I'll put a space, a dash, space, and then quotation marks. So what I want is the account reference, a space, a dash, a space, and then I want the name of the customer. So again, another plus sign. I'll put another space in just to make it easier to read. And then I want the invoice name in this case. Now, the reason I'm choosing the invoice name rather than the sales ledger name is that when you actually enter an invoice, you can actually change the name of the customer. It's one of those fields that you can override. So I want it to pull through the name from the actual invoice itself. but chances are you're not going to do that, and potentially we could use the same sort of sales ledger variables, the account reference and the customer name. So we're just going to choose the final one, which is, what did I want? Invoice name. So we'll just go and scroll down, select it from the list. There it is. And we're going to leave it at that. So we'll just click OK. And now we've got an expression there. And again, if I wanted to, I could highlight that one. I could get into properties. And if I needed to, rather than just call it expression 1, I could rename it so it has a bit more meaning when I'm just looking at the design of that on my report. Let's just nudge it into position. I'll just do that by hand. And I'll just leave it at that length for the time being. It's quite short. And if we click the preview option at the bottom, just OK that, you can see I've got the information there. Now, as you can see, there's not enough space, and you can see that sort of on the others as well. There's not enough space to show the full account reference and then the name. So that's when we just go back to design view, highlight expression 1. I'll just make it a bit wider. Again, that might be a little bit of trial and error maybe to make sure you can get it all in there. Just click off it, back to the preview mode, OK the criteria, and we can see we've now got this. So it's a lot more compact. So again, it's maybe just some food for thought for you as to the kind of thing that you can do with expressions. Right, now obviously you don't need to memorize all the expressions or calculations that you might need. The majority of the time the expression that you're going to create is just a way of translating the sort of the calculation. So when we looked at the percentage of credit available, for instance, it's just a way of translating that as if you're working it out on paper. You just need to translate it from that into something that the report designer can understand. And you've got the control by adding in things like brackets, etc. So if you know the calculation, you just simply need to find the names of those values in report designer and put that calculation into that expression editor. Right, now that brings us to the end of what we'd planned to do demo-wise. Keep your questions coming for the time being. I'm just going to pop back to the slides very quickly. So if you've got any questions, pop them in there. As I say, we've still got Abby, Jackie, Tina, and Tim on hand, so loads of experience there. Pop your questions in and we'll try and get an answer to you before we end the session. Right, okay. So just as a reminder, loads of information in the help center. I'm going to plug this on every single report design session that we run because there's some great information in there to help. I've also, if you have downloaded the today's handout, if you've not the print friendly one, because you find the links on that one, that format don't actually work, but if you've downloaded the standard one, then these options will work. I've pulled out some of the common articles, the ones to help you get started with expressions. It means you can have a go as well. So expressions and functions, it'll guide you through a bit like what we've gone through today. You've got formatting rules. So what is the format you need to follow when you start adding expressions and building them? There's common expressions. Again, we use this phrase a lot, don't reinvent the wheel. That expression, it may have already been designed for you. Easier to access an article. The common ones are on there. You just copy it and literally paste it into that expression editor window. There's an article on using dates in your expressions. If you email out documents, you can put an expression in your subject line of the email. So maybe having your company name, then maybe the word invoice followed by the date of the invoice or the invoice number. So that's the type of thing you can build into that the subject line of your emails. And also snippets as well. So saving your common those expressions that you may have built that you might think, well, actually, I'm going to be using that one quite often. You can save that as a snippet. So within the expression editor, there's an option along the bottom of the screen to save that. So saving that snippet, meaning that you can then just load it on next time round. So it could be a good little time saver. You don't need to build them from scratch each and every time. So if you have downloaded that, nice easy access. If not, just get into the Help Center and you'll be able to, should be able to find that information relatively easy. Right, just as a reminder, these are the sessions we're running. So it is session 4 that we're running today. 3 and 4 will be repeated next week if you haven't had a chance to attend those. 1 and 2 are available as now as recordings only. We've already run those twice. But 3 and 4 will be repeated. I think 3 is repeated on Tuesday next morning. Next week, I should say. So that will be 11 o'clock. And today's session, if you maybe want to go away, contemplate a bit, or maybe you missed a bit of it, if you got interrupted, maybe you work in a busy office and the phones are going all the time, you can't concentrate. If you're in that position, there's an opportunity to attend this session again. Session 5 will be on Tuesday afternoon next week, and session 6 on Thursday afternoon, and the 5 and 6 will be repeated the week after. So plenty of scope to get yourself registered for those sessions. If you can't, we will make the recordings available afterwards. A quick question from Fiona there. Can you use expressions in the body of an email, or is it just the subject line? The only way you can use them within your emails is going to be the likes of your subject line and also the file name for the attachment. So, you know, if you attach your invoice as a PDF, for instance, you can give that a specific file name based around an expression, but not in the main body. You can't do that. If you need to customize the main body of an email, then if you work with the likes of Outlook, then you would output your emails so that they don't send automatically. And it means that you can then open that. Excuse me. You can then open that and edit your email before you click send. So you've got that opportunity as well. If you've never emailed before, then we do have some recordings available on that as well. So do, again, check those out. Links included on your follow-up email. Right, looking at the questions list, you've kept my colleagues really busy there, so well done. Hopefully you've had an answer to your question. Do have a play around with expressions. Remember, if you go to edit a report, you need to do that file save as, and it just protects the standard report. So I want to quickly thank you for coming along today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Again, giving you some more food for thought for report design as to what you can do. It can be really simple, but again, with expressions, it could get quite complex. But giving you some food for thought, and hopefully it's encouraged you to have a go as well. As usual, we'll have an exit survey will pop up as you leave today's session. If you can take a minute to complete that, any comments you want to make, thoughts, ideas that you want to share with us, pop it on there, and your follow-up email will be with you in round about an hour's time. So do get yourself registered for the other sessions, plenty of scope to attend those. So we'll end the webinar just at that point. I think all the questions have been answered. So many thanks for coming along. Take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you on some other sessions soon. Many thanks.